and welcome to Word of the Week. This week we're going to be looking at the word responsible. As ever though, we'll start with the words we've looked at so far this term. So we've looked at community, culture, evaluate, purchase, resource, analyse, interpret, method, structure, primary, and last week, continuity. Now, we said last week that it's really important, obviously, we study these words first, but then it's really important we learn these words. We are all human, so therefore we forget things, and therefore it's important that we keep repeating and retrieving information in order for it to stick. So on that note, let's look at these words. So interpret, method, structure, and primary. So what I'd like to do is for the teacher to pause the video and for you all to write down what those words mean. So let's just check that we've got those right. So the first one was interpret. So that's to understand the meaning of something or to make sense of something. Method is a particular way of doing something. Structure is the way something is put together or built. And then primary is the most important or the earliest in time or the first. So let's look at this word responsible. So let's just try and unpick some of the things we already know about it. So responsible is being the primary cause of something. So you're able to be blamed or credited. So it could be a good thing. So you're responsible for a good thing. So it could be argued that we have responsibility for the earth, for the environment in which we live at. We know that we have a responsibility within schools. So we make sure that we don't litter at break times because we respect our environment and we have responsibility for that. We have a responsibility for our community to look at the values of our community to make sure we're staying within the values of that community. And then we've also got a responsibility to ourselves to make sure that we look after ourselves. So I want the teacher to pause the video for a minute and discuss with your partner what you already know about the word responsibility. For example, when was the last time you were responsible for something? So let's dig a little bit deeper with this word. Like we said earlier, we've got this social responsibility. Each and every one of us have a social responsibility, and that's part of being a citizen in this country, is that you show social responsibility. And that is to your peers and to your fellow students, your fellow citizens. We have a social responsibility not to leave anybody out, to be anti-racist, to make sure that we do not discriminate against people. And we have a social responsibility to speak out when we see discrimination or prejudice. So we're going to now go through this word responsible. And again, like last week, we want to listen carefully. We want to pay attention and make that mental effort in order to make sure we are learning this word. So we'll start with the etymology of the word. So the word comes from the Latin respondere, which means to answer back or to respond. So the prefix, remember that's that beginning of the word, re means back. So can you think of other words which start with re? So it might be rewind, for example. Now let's look at the definition of the word. So it's having an obligation to do something or having control or over or care for someone as part of one's job or role. So you could have a responsibility over someone, or being the primary cause of something, also being to be blamed or credited for it. So that is what being responsible is. So we all have a responsibility for ourselves. So in terms of the characteristics of the word, remember that's the features of the word. If you're responsible for something, then essentially you answer for it. So we know that at school we take responsibility for our own behaviour, and we answer for that if we don't live up to those high standards we expect for all of you. Mr. Mann, for example, answers for the English department because he is in charge of the English department as the head of department, and therefore he was responsible for that department. So now let's look at some examples of this word. Remember, that's how it might be used. So the Secretary of State responsible for the Department of Health is Matt Hancock. The Nazis were responsible for the start of World War II. We all have a responsibility to be good citizens. So we all need to ensure we do that. Okay, so as always, your teacher is now going to pause the video and we want you to write down what you remember about the word responsible. Try and get that definition, characteristics, examples, and etymology. And now let's self-check it. So remember, you should have had this as the definition. So having an obligation to do something, or having control over or care for someone as part of one's job or role. Characteristics, remember, if you're responsible for something, then you answer for it. Examples, so for example, the Nazis were responsible for the start of World War II. And lastly, the etymology, where it comes from. So it comes from that idea that we responde, so we answer back, so we answer for something.